New York City was never quiet. Even at midnight, the city hummed with life, the honking of yellow cabs, the chatter of late-night diners, and the distant wail of sirens bouncing off glass skyscrapers. But on the top floor of Steele Enterprises, all was silent except for the tapping of polished leather shoes against the marble floor. Alexander Steele entered his office with the same presence he carried everywhere: cold, commanding, and untouchable. At 35, he was already one of the most feared CEOs in the tech industry. Rumor had it that he could terminate a deal or a career with a single glance. His employees respected him, admired him, but also feared him. And Alexander preferred it that way. He shrugged off his black overcoat and handed it wordlessly to his secretary, Emily Carter, who had been waiting by the door with her usual poise. She was efficient, graceful, always anticipating his needs before he spoke. Her honey-brown eyes flickered up at him briefly before lowering again, a habit she had developed after years of working under his intense gaze. "Your dinner meeting with the investors from Chicago has been moved to Thursday," Emily reported, her voice calm and professional. "And the board presentation draft is ready for your review." Alexander didn't thank her. He never did. He simply nodded, his tall frame moving toward the massive floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan. Lights sprawled beneath him like stars, yet to him, they felt distant, untouchable, just like everything else in his life. Emily watched him for a moment longer than she should have. Even after 3 years, she couldn't get used to the way he carried himself. Sharp jawline, dark hair perfectly styled, a presence that seemed both magnetic and suffocating. She told herself she admired him because of his work ethic, his intelligence, his ambition. But deep down, she knew it was more. She loved him. It was a dangerous truth she had locked away in the quiet corners of her heart. "Leave the board draft on my desk," Alexander said suddenly, not turning to look at her. His voice was deep, clipped, with that usual edge that kept people at arm's length. "Yes, Mr. Steele." She placed the neatly bound folder on the mahogany desk, her fingers brushing the polished surface. She wanted to say something more, something personal, but as always, she held back. He didn't need her affection, he needed her efficiency. Hours slipped by. The office emptied, but Emily remained at her desk outside his office, typing reports, answering late calls, keeping everything in order. This was her place, on the sidelines, supporting a man who didn't even realize how much space he took in her heart. Later that week came the annual Steele Enterprises Gala, held at the Metropolitan Hotel Ballroom. The room glowed with golden chandeliers, champagne flutes clinked, and the city's elite mingled in tuxedos and gowns. Alexander arrived, commanding attention the moment he stepped inside. Cameras flashed, investors rushed forward, and socialites whispered behind their glasses of wine. Emily was there too, though not as a guest of honor. She wore a simple midnight blue dress, elegant yet modest, perfectly appropriate for someone in her position. She kept close to Alexander, her eyes scanning the crowd for potential distractions or threats to his time. But that night, fate had its own agenda. "Emily!" A bright, cheerful voice called from across the ballroom. Emily turned, her eyes lighting up when she saw Sophia Hayes weaving through the crowd toward her. Sophia was her best friend since college. Blonde, radiant, full of life, the kind of woman who seemed to carry sunshine wherever she went. Emily hadn't expected her to be there. "Sophia, what are you doing here?" Emily asked, hugging her tightly. "My firm got invited." "PR connections," Sophia grinned, her blue eyes sparkling. Then she glanced past Emily, toward the tall figure standing a few feet away. "Oh, is that him?" Emily's smile faltered. "Who?" "Your boss, Alexander Steele." Sophia lowered her voice, but not enough. "Wow, Emily, you didn't tell me he looks like that." Before Emily could respond, Alexander turned. His eyes, cold and calculating as ever, fell on Sophia. For the first time Emily could remember, his expression softened, just slightly, but enough to make her chest tighten. "This is my best friend, Sophia Hayes," Emily said quickly, forcing brightness into her tone. Alexander extended his hand. "Alexander Steele." Sophia took his hand with an easy confidence. "Pleasure. Emily has told me so much about working here." Emily froze. Had she? She couldn't remember ever saying much about him, at least, not the things she really thought. Alexander studied Sophia for a moment longer than was necessary. There was something in his eyes, curiosity, maybe even admiration. Emily recognized it instantly because she had dreamed of it for years. The night carried on, but Emily felt like an invisible thread had been pulled taut between the three of them. Alexander, once so distant from everyone, found reasons to linger near Sophia. He asked her questions, listened to her stories, even laughed, a low, rare sound that made heads turn. Emily stood by, her heart splintering quietly with every smile he directed at her best friend. She forced herself to laugh at the right moments, to refill champagne glasses, to maintain her role as the ever-reliable secretary. But inside, a storm was building. When the gala ended, Alexander offered to have his driver drop Sophia home. "I can take a cab, really," Sophia protested lightly. "Nonsense," Alexander said, his tone final but not unkind. Emily watched as the two of them walked toward the sleek black car waiting outside. Her chest ached in ways she couldn't put into words. She wanted to scream, to tell him, "Look at me. I've been here all along." But she remained silent, her hands clasped tightly around her small clutch purse. As the car door closed behind them, she whispered into the night air, unheard by anyone. "You were supposed to notice me first." That night, back in her small apartment, Emily stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She replayed every glance, every smile Alexander had given Sophia. For years she had kept her feelings buried, believing that her loyalty and quiet devotion would one day be enough. But now, for the first time, she felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. For the first time, she feared her love was not only unreturned but also about to be crushed by the one person she trusted most, her best friend. The following Monday morning dawned gray and wet over Manhattan. Rain streaked across the glass facade of Steel Enterprises, turning the skyline into a blur. Inside, the building buzzed with its usual rhythm, phones ringing, heels clicking on polished floors, muted chatter about quarterly numbers and looming deadlines. Emily Carter sat at her desk outside Alexander Steele's office, her posture perfect as always, but her eyes betrayed the fatigue of a sleepless night. She had spent the weekend replaying the gala in her mind, every glance Alexander had given Sophia echoing like a haunting refrain. Her best friend, her boss, and her heart, caught helplessly in between. The elevator chimed, and Alexander stepped out, tall and immaculate in a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. His hair was slicked back, his expression unreadable. He moved past employees who straightened nervously in his presence, his very aura commanding silence. "Good morning, Mr. Steele," Emily said, forcing her voice steady. Alexander gave his usual curt nod and entered his office without a word. Normally, that coldness no longer stung. She had grown used to it over the years. But after seeing how his eyes had softened toward Sophia, the contrast cut deeper. He could be warm. He simply chose not to be with her. She buried herself in work, answering calls, organizing his schedule, updating reports. Work was her armor, the one thing that kept her from collapsing under the weight of unspoken feelings. That afternoon, as the storm outside began to fade, Emily's phone buzzed. She answered quickly, her professional tone automatic. "Steel Enterprises, this is Emily Carter." "Emily, don't sound so formal, it's me," Sophia's cheerful voice chimed on the other end. Emily's chest tightened. "Sophia, hey, what's up? I'm downstairs in the lobby. Thought I'd surprise you for lunch." Emily hesitated. The last thing she wanted was for Sophia to cross paths with Alexander again so soon. But she couldn't refuse her best friend. "All right. Give me 10 minutes to wrap something up." Minutes later, the two sat at a small cafe across the street. Sophia, dressed in a chic beige coat, stirred her latte with effortless grace. Emily, still in her navy pencil skirt and blouse, tried to focus on her salad but had little appetite. "You didn't tell me your boss was that interesting," Sophia teased, leaning in with a mischievous smile. Emily's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "He's difficult, and demanding. Not exactly what I'd call interesting. Sophia laughed, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her face. Maybe to you. But Emily, he talked to me for almost half the gala. He's not as cold as people say. He can be charming. The word stabbed Emily's chest like a knife. She forced a small laugh. Charming isn't the first word that comes to mind when you work for him every day. Sophia tilted her head. Come on, don't tell me you've never noticed it. He's powerful, sharp, intense. The kind of man who walks into a room and everyone notices. That's rare. Emily gripped her glass of water tightly. Of course I've noticed. Every single day. And I've fallen in love with it, even when I shouldn't. But she said nothing. That evening, back at the office, Alexander surprised her. Carter, he said abruptly, standing in the doorway of his office. Yes, Mr. Steele. I need you to reschedule tomorrow's investor briefing. And he hesitated, which was unusual for him. Do you still have your friend's contact information? Emily's heart sank. Sophia's? Yes. Hayes. She mentioned working in PR at the gala. I'd like to discuss a potential partnership with her firm. His tone was neutral, businesslike, but something in his eyes hinted otherwise. Emily forced her lips into a professional smile. Of course, Mr. Steele. I'll reach out to her. When he disappeared back into his office, Emily lowered her gaze to her desk, her hands trembling slightly. She had become the bridge between the man she loved and the woman who unknowingly stole his attention. That night, when she called Sophia, her voice was steady though her chest ached. Hey, sophomore Alexander wants to meet you again. Business stuff. Are you free this week? Sophia's delighted laugh rang through the line. Emily, that's amazing. Yes, I'm free Thursday night. I'll make it work. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. Great. I'll arrange it. Understood. Thursday came quickly. The meeting was set at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Hudson River, sleek and modern with glass walls that reflected the city lights. Emily attended, as always, because Alexander insisted on her presence at business dinners. Sophia arrived looking radiant in an emerald green dress, her confidence lighting up the room. Alexander stood as she approached, offering his hand, his eyes lingering just a moment too long. Emily sat beside them, her presence invisible as they spoke about branding strategies, public image, and the merging of corporate networks. Alexander listened with rare patience, even allowing Sophia to challenge his ideas, a luxury few were given. For the first time in her career, Emily felt like an intruder at her own table. She answered when spoken to, took notes, ordered wine, all while watching the subtle sparks fly between them. At one point, Sophia laughed at something Alexander said. A real laugh, bright and unrestrained. And Alexander Steele, the man who rarely smiled, actually chuckled. Emily's chest tightened so painfully she excused herself to the restroom. In the mirror, she saw her reflection, poised, composed, but her eyes betrayed her. They glistened with unshed tears. She splashed water on her face, whispering to herself, "You can't cry. Not here. Not in front of them." When she returned, nothing had changed. They were still leaning slightly toward each other, still absorbed in conversation. Later, as the evening ended, Alexander stood to escort Sophia to her car. Emily trailed behind, silent. The cool night air carried the distant sound of the river. "Thank you for tonight, Alexander," Sophia said warmly. "It was enlightening." "The pleasure was mine," he replied, his tone softer than Emily had ever heard. When the car pulled away with Sophia inside, Alexander remained on the sidewalk, staring after it for a moment longer. Emily finally spoke, her voice low. "Shall I call the driver for you, Mr. Steele?" He turned, his expression unreadable. "Yes. Thank you, Carter." Just like that, the wall was back. But for Emily, the damage had already been done. That night, lying awake in her apartment, Emily realized something she had never dared admit before. She wasn't just in love with Alexander Steele. She was about to lose him to her own best friend. The week dragged on with a heaviness Emily Carter couldn't shake. Every morning she arrived at Steele Enterprises precisely at 7:30 a.m., dressed immaculately, coffee in hand for Alexander, her files perfectly organized. And yet, she felt herself unraveling. She had built her reputation on control, calm under pressure, efficient, unshakable. But now, every smile Alexander gave Sophia replayed in her mind like a cruel film reel. Every meeting he requested with Sophia's PR firm felt like another nail hammered into the coffin of her unspoken dreams. That Friday night, the office was quiet. Most employees had long since left for the weekend, but Emily remained. The soft hum of the city below filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Papers lay scattered across her desk, reports she had read 3 times without absorbing a single word. Her eyes burned from exhaustion, but she kept typing. Work was safer than feeling. Work didn't betray you. Through the glass wall of his office, Alexander was still at his desk, tie loosened, his attention fixed on his laptop screen. He hadn't acknowledged her in hours, and yet she stayed, just in case he needed something. Just in case he noticed her. At nearly 10 o'clock, Alexander finally stood. "That'll be all for tonight, Carter," he said in his usual clipped tone. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat and forced her professional mask back into place. "Of course, Mr. Steele. Good night." He walked past her without a second glance, his cologne lingering in the air after he disappeared into the private elevator. The silence that followed felt unbearable. Emily sat frozen for a long moment, staring at the closed doors, before the dam inside her finally broke. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling faster than she could wipe them away. Her shoulders trembled as she bent over her desk, muffling her sobs against the cool surface. For 3 years she had given everything, her loyalty, her time, her heart. And yet she remained invisible. Worse, she was forced to watch as her best friend became the one to draw out the warmth she had prayed to see. She didn't hear the door open until it was too late. "Emily!" The familiar voice froze her in place. She sat up quickly, swiping at her eyes, trying to compose herself. Standing in the doorway, still in her coat from an evening out, was Sophia Hayes. "What are you doing here?" Emily asked, her voice strained. Sophia tilted her head, her brow furrowed with concern. "I came by to surprise you. I thought maybe we could grab a late dinner together." She stepped closer, her eyes softening as she took in Emily's tear-streaked face. What's wrong?" "Nothing," Emily said quickly, standing and turning away, busying herself with stacking papers. "Just tired. It's been a long week." But Sophia wasn't fooled. She crossed the room and gently touched Emily's arm. "Don't do that. Don't shut me out. You've been different lately. Quieter. Is it work? Is Alexander being impossible again?" The mention of his name cracked something inside Emily. Her eyes brimmed again. Sophia's expression shifted. She lowered her voice. "Emily, is it him?" Emily froze. Her silence was answer enough. "Oh my God," Sophia whispered, realization dawning. "You're in love with him." Emily's throat tightened, words stuck like thorns. "Finally," she whispered, "for a long time." Sophia pulled her into a hug before she could stop her. Emily stiffened, then sagged against her friend, her body trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sophia murmured. "Because what good would it do?" Emily's voice cracked. "He doesn't see me, sophomore. Not the way he looks at you. I've been right there, by his side, every day. And it doesn't matter. It's like I don't exist." Sophia's eyes widened, guilt flashing across her face. "Emily, I didn't mean to." "I know. Emily interrupted, pulling away. She forced a small smile, though her tears betrayed her. You didn't do anything wrong. You're beautiful, charming, everything he could want. It was only a matter of time before he noticed. Please, Emily said softly, shaking her head. Don't apologize for being yourself. Sophia's heart twisted. She had always known Emily as strong, unflappable, the friend who carried others but never leaned on anyone herself. Seeing her broken like this made her chest ache. But there was something else too, a creeping guilt she couldn't ignore. Because deep down, she had felt Alexander's interest as clearly as Emily had seen it. And a part of her had enjoyed it. Now, that knowledge tasted bitter. Emily, Sophia said gently, I need you to hear this. Yes, Alexander. He's powerful, magnetic, and maybe I got caught up in that for a moment. But you, she touched Emily's hand, you know him better than anyone. You're the one who keeps his world from falling apart. If anyone deserves his heart, it's you. Emily laughed bitterly through her tears. Then why does it feel like I'm the last person he'll ever notice? The two friends sat in silence for a while, the city lights glowing faintly beyond the glass. Finally, Sophia stood. Come on. You can't stay here all night. Let's go. I'll buy you dinner, and we'll talk about anything but men. Emily hesitated, then nodded weakly. She gathered her things, grateful at least for Sophia's presence, even if it hurt. As they walked out together, Emily cast one last glance back at Alexander's empty office. The desk was neat, the lights dimmed, but she could still feel him there, his absence louder than his presence had ever been. That weekend, Emily tried to lose herself in small, ordinary things. Grocery shopping, laundry, reading a book she couldn't focus on. But every time her phone buzzed, her heart leapt, only to fall again when it wasn't him. On Sunday evening, she received a message from Sophia. Dinner tomorrow? My treat. No excuses. Emily smiled faintly at the screen. At least some things in her life remained constant. But as she set her phone down, she couldn't shake the thought that the ground beneath her was shifting, little by little, and she had no power to stop it. Monday would come again, and with it, Alexander Steele. And she would be forced to keep pretending. The Monday morning sun poured through the towering windows of Steele Enterprises, reflecting off chrome and glass. The city outside bustled with energy, but inside Alexander Steele's corner office, silence reigned. Alexander sat at his desk, hands clasped beneath his chin, his eyes unfocused. The spreadsheet on his laptop remained untouched. For a man whose every moment was usually calculated and efficient, this pause was unusual. He was thinking about Sophia Hayes. Or at least, he was trying to. He recalled the sound of her laughter, the way she had met his gaze without flinching, her confidence when challenging his ideas. She was a spark in a world that had long since dulled for him. Yet as he replayed those moments, another image kept intruding. His secretary, Emily Carter, asleep at her desk late Friday night. Her head had been resting on a stack of reports, hair falling loosely around her face. For once, she hadn't looked perfectly composed. She had looked human, vulnerable. Alexander had stopped in his tracks, watching her for a moment longer than he should have. He had felt something unfamiliar stir inside him, something dangerously close to tenderness. But then Sophia had called, her voice bright on the other end of the phone, and the moment had shattered. He had left without waking Emily, brushing aside the uncomfortable tug in his chest. Now, sitting in his office, the memory returned with stubborn persistence. A knock broke his thoughts. "Come in," Alexander said, his tone sharper than intended. Emily stepped inside, holding a neatly bound folder. She wore a slate-gray blouse tucked into a pencil skirt, her posture as straight as ever. Only someone who looked closely would notice the faint shadows beneath her eyes. "The updated investor report, Mr. Steele," she said evenly, placing the folder on his desk. Alexander glanced up, his gaze lingering a moment too long. She avoided his eyes, as if sensing his scrutiny. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, about to leave, when he added abruptly, "How was your weekend?" Emily froze. In 3 years, Alexander Steele had never once asked her such a question. She turned slowly, searching his face for mockery, but found none. "It was fine. Quiet." He nodded, as though that single word carried weight. "Good." The silence stretched. Finally, Emily excused herself, her heels clicking softly as she disappeared. Alexander leaned back in his chair, unsettled. Why had he asked? Why had he cared? Later that week, Alexander found himself at a charity gala, one he typically attended out of obligation rather than interest. He stood in a sea of tuxedos and gowns, shaking hands with donors, offering clipped smiles, making small talk that meant nothing. But when Sophia arrived, dressed in a flowing silver gown that caught the light, the room seemed to shift. She greeted him warmly, slipping easily into conversation, her laughter drawing others to her like moths to flame. And yet, as Alexander listened, something felt off. Because out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Emily. She was there, of course, she was always there, moving quietly in the background, clipboard in hand, ensuring everything ran smoothly. She wasn't dressed to dazzle like Sophia, but there was an understated elegance in her navy dress, her hair pinned neatly, her focus unwavering. While Sophia's presence was like fire, Emily's was like gravity, subtle, constant, impossible to escape. Alexander found his gaze drifting toward her more times than he cared to admit. He told himself it was habit, that he relied on her presence, her efficiency. But the truth lodged uncomfortably in his chest. When Emily wasn't near, he felt her absence. The confusion only deepened that night when he returned to the office to finish work. It was past midnight, and to his irritation and strange relief, Emily was still there, bent over her desk. "Why are you still here?" he demanded, striding toward her. She startled, quickly straightening. "I needed to finalize tomorrow's agenda." "It's after midnight," he said, his tone sharper than intended. "Go home." She blinked, surprised. "I usually stay until." "Go home, Emily." His voice softened on the last word, betraying an unfamiliar warmth. Her lips parted slightly, as though the sound of her name from his mouth startled her. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then she gathered her things, murmured, "Good night, Mr. Steele," and left. Alexander watched her go, unsettled by the strange ache that lingered in the empty office. The following day, during a meeting with Sophia, Alexander's phone buzzed with a message. He ignored it until afterward, only to find it was from Emily, efficient as always, updating him on a scheduling change. But what caught his attention wasn't the message itself. It was the memory of her voice the night before, quiet and weary, saying good night. It shouldn't matter. She was his secretary. Nothing more. So why did it? That evening, Alexander lingered in the office longer than usual, pacing by the window as the city lights flickered to life. He prided himself on clarity, on always knowing exactly what he wanted. But now, for the first time in years, he was adrift. Sophia intrigued him. But Emily was always there. Not dazzling, not demanding, but steady, loyal, essential, and perhaps, though he dared not admit it, irreplaceable. The next morning, as Emily handed him his coffee, their fingers brushed briefly. It was nothing, a mere accident. But Alexander felt the contact linger long after she had pulled away. He looked at her then, really looked at her. At the quiet strength in her posture, the way her eyes held both exhaustion and determination, the faint sadness she tried so hard to hide. Something stirred again, stronger this time. And Alexander Steele, the man known for his unshakable composure, realized with a jolt of unease. He didn't know which woman he wanted more. The following week in the office felt unusually heavy for Emily. Though the rhythm of work was the same, emails, calls, schedules, documents, the atmosphere around her was different. Or maybe it wasn't the air at all. Maybe it was her. She could feel it in every look Alexander gave Sophia, every softened tone in his voice when he spoke to her best friend. Emily kept telling herself she could handle it, but her chest ached as though a hand gripped it tightly and refused to let go. On a rainy Thursday evening, Emily and Sophia decided to meet for dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, far away from the steel and glass of Manhattan. They often came here in college, back when life was simpler and love was only a dream, not a battlefield. The candlelight flickered on the table between them as Sophia twirled spaghetti around her fork. She looked radiant that night, hair falling naturally, cheeks flushed from the warmth inside. Emily forced a smile, sipping her wine. "You look happy." Sophia hesitated, her lips curving into a shy grin. "I guess I am." Emily's heart already knew what was coming, but she braced herself. "Alex asked me out," Sophia confessed, her eyes lighting up. "Just a casual dinner. But it felt different. Emily, he's not the cold man everyone says he is. With me, he's warm, attentive. He even laughed at my ridiculous story about my cat." Can you imagine Alexander Steele laughing about cats? Emily's fork slipped against her plate, the screech making her flinch. She quickly regained her composure, nodding. That's wonderful, sophomore." Sophia leaned forward, almost conspiratorial. "I think I might like him. I mean, really like him." The words pierced through Emily's chest like shards of glass. She forced herself to breathe, to smile, to be the supportive friend Sophia had always known. "He deserves someone like you," Emily whispered, though the words tasted like poison on her tongue. Back at the Steel Tech headquarters the next day, Emily buried herself in work. But she couldn't ignore the way Alexander's eyes followed Sophia when she entered the office. He rarely broke his professional mask, but when Sophia was near, his gaze softened, his posture relaxed. Emily noticed everything. Late that afternoon, Alexander summoned Emily into his office. His sharp blue eyes scanned her face as she entered, as though searching for something. "You've been distracted lately," he said bluntly. Emily blinked, caught off guard. "I apologize, Mr. Steele. It won't affect my work." "It already has," Alexander replied, voice calm but firm. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. 3 errors in yesterday's reports. That's not like you." Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. "It won't happen again." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Alexander's voice lowered, softer than she'd ever heard it. "Is something wrong, Emily?" She looked at him, really looked at him. The man she had loved for years sat right in front of her, concern flickering in his icy gaze. How cruel fate was, to let him ask the very question that tore her apart. "I'm fine," she lied, standing straighter. "Just a little tired. Nothing I can't handle." Alexander studied her, his jaw tightening, but he didn't press further. "Very well. You may go." She left quickly, her heart pounding. The urge to cry clawed at her throat, but she wouldn't let him see her break. Not him. Not now. That weekend, Emily found herself at Sophia's apartment. They curled up on the couch, wine glasses in hand, just like old times. But tonight felt different, tense with unspoken truths. Sophia laughed as she recalled another moment with Alexander. He walked me through Central Park after dinner. Can you believe that? The Alexander Steele, strolling like a regular man, telling me about his childhood. It was intimate. Emily's fingers tightened around her glass. What did he say? That he grew up in Chicago. That his mother left when he was young. That he built everything himself because he couldn't trust anyone else to hold his world together. Sophia's eyes softened. He's complicated, Em. But I think there's more to him than people see. More than even you know. The word stung, though Emily kept her face neutral. If only Sophia knew how much Emily already understood about Alexander. His habits, his fears, his silences. She had studied him every day for 3 years. She knew him in ways Sophia never could. Yet somehow, Sophia had unlocked a part of him Emily had never touched. The irony was unbearable. Emily. Sophia's voice broke through her thoughts. You're awfully quiet. Emily forced a chuckle. Just listening. You're clearly smitten. Sophia leaned her head back on the couch, sighing dreamily. Maybe I am. Emily excused herself early that night, unable to stay any longer. Walking back to her apartment under the city lights, she finally let her tears fall. On Monday morning, Alexander noticed something he couldn't ignore. Emily was colder, efficient as ever, but distant. Her voice lacked warmth, her gaze never lingered on him. It unsettled him more than he expected. After a meeting, he stopped her as she gathered her notes. Emily. Yes, Mr. Steele. His tone softened. What happened to the way you used to smile? I haven't seen it in days. She froze, startled. Then she gave him the most practiced smile she could manage. Perhaps you haven't been looking. And with that, she walked out, leaving Alexander unsettled in a way no boardroom battle ever had. The triangle was tightening. Emily loved Alexander. Sophia was falling for him. And Alexander, despite his denial, was caught in the gravity of them both. But in the shadows, none of them realized yet, their hearts were about to be tested in ways they could not imagine. The storm had only just begun. The night of Alexander's confession began like any other, at least, that's what he told himself. But his chest tightened in ways unfamiliar, his mind restless even during meetings. The boardroom's sharp voices, the endless slides of profits and projections, all blurred into static. He wasn't thinking about the numbers. He was thinking about Sophia. Her laughter lingered in his memory. The way she tilted her head when she disagreed with him. The fearless sparkle in her eyes. By the time the clock struck 8, the decision had been made. He would tell her. The dinner. Alexander booked a private room at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, a quiet place of candlelight and velvet curtains. He rarely went through such trouble, but tonight demanded more than businesslike efficiency. Tonight was personal. Sophia arrived in a simple navy dress, her blonde hair falling loosely around her shoulders. She smiled warmly as she slid into the seat across from him. You didn't have to go all out, Alex, she teased. I'm perfectly happy with takeout pizza. Alexander allowed a small chuckle. You deserve more than takeout. For a while, they talked casually. Her job at the gallery, his latest investment, the absurdity of New York traffic. But beneath the surface, tension brewed. Alexander rarely stumbled over words, but tonight, he found himself rehearsing sentences in his mind. At last, as the waiter poured their wine and left, Alexander leaned forward. His voice dropped, intimate and raw. Sophia, I don't say this often, or at all. But I want to be honest with you. Sophia tilted her head, curious. Go on. His chest tightened. For the first time in years, he He wasn't Alexander Steele, the CEO, the untouchable figure. He was just a man standing on the edge of something terrifying. "I've spent most of my life shutting people out," he admitted. "Trusting no one, relying on no one. And then, you walked in. You challenge me. You make me laugh. You make me feel like—" He broke off, searching for the words. "Like I'm not alone anymore." Sophia's eyes softened, but her lips pressed into a line. "I'm saying—" His voice dropped to a whisper. "I think I'm falling for you." Silence filled the room, broken only by the distant clink of silverware from the main dining hall. Alexander's heart pounded. He had just laid himself bare, something he had sworn never to do. But Sophia didn't smile. She didn't blush. Instead, she looked pained. "Alex," she began softly. The rejection. Her hand reached across the table, gently touching his. "You are an incredible man. Stronger and more vulnerable than you realize. Any woman would be lucky to have your heart." His stomach dropped. He recognized the tone. "But not you," he said flatly. Sophia's eyes glistened. "I can't. Because my heart, it already belongs to someone else." Alexander froze. He searched her gaze for dishonesty, but there was none. Only sincerity, tinged with regret. "Who?" His voice was low, almost dangerous. Sophia shook her head gently. "It doesn't matter. What matters is, it isn't you." The words cut sharper than any business betrayal he had ever faced. For the first time, Alexander Steele had lost. Not in the market, not in negotiations, but in love. He sat back, expression guarded, though his heart was in ruins. "I see." "Alex," Sophia whispered, "I never meant to hurt you. I care about you, I truly do. But if I said yes, it would be a lie. And you deserve more than lies." For a moment, he wanted to lash out, to shut her out completely. But her honesty disarmed him. She hadn't used him, hadn't played him. She had simply spoken the truth. And that truth shattered him. Emily's silent pain. That same night, Emily sat alone in her apartment, staring at her untouched dinner. She couldn't stop thinking about them, Alexander and Sophia, together. The image twisted her insides until she finally set her plate aside. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. "Can we talk tomorrow?" Emily swallowed hard. Her heart pounded as she typed back, "Of course." She didn't know that at that very moment, Alexander sat in the back of his car, staring out at the glittering Manhattan skyline, more broken than he'd ever been. The aftermath. The next day, Sophia met Emily in their favorite coffee shop, a quiet corner cafe that smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon. Emily smiled weakly. "So, how was dinner?" Sophia hesitated, then sighed. "It didn't go how Alex expected." Emily's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He told me he had feelings for me." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She clenched her coffee cup so tightly she thought it might shatter. "And," she forced out. "I told him I couldn't," Sophia said softly, "because my heart belongs to someone else." Emily blinked. "Someone else?" Sophia nodded. "Yes. And no matter how incredible Alex is, it wouldn't be fair to him." Emily felt torn between relief and despair. Relief that Sophia hadn't accepted Alexander's love. Despair that Sophia still had captured the heart Emily had longed for. "Emily," Sophia said gently, reaching for her hand, "he's hurting. You see it, don't you? He hides behind that cold exterior, but last night, he was just a man. A man who wanted to be loved." Emily's throat tightened. "Yes," she whispered. "I know. Alexander's realization. Back at the office, Alexander was different. He buried himself in work more fiercely than ever, his walls rebuilt higher, stronger. But every time he caught a glimpse of Emily, her quiet dedication, her unspoken loyalty, something twisted inside him. Late one evening, as she gathered her things to leave, he called her name. "Emily." She turned, surprised. "Yes, Mr. Steele." He hesitated. Words hovered on his lips, words he had never allowed himself to say. Instead, he only murmured, "Thank you." Emily frowned. "For what?" "For staying," he said simply. And in that moment, Emily's heart ached with both joy and sorrow. Because while Sophia had rejected him, Alexander still didn't see her, not truly. But maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to. The chapter closed with 3 broken hearts, tangled in silence. Sophia's love was elsewhere. Alexander's pride was wounded, his heart confused. And Emily's love remained unspoken, burning quietly in the shadows. The stage was set for the most painful truth of all. Autumn had fully arrived in New York. The air carried a chill, and Central Park transformed into a canvas of gold, orange, and crimson leaves. People bustled about in coats and scarves, laughter and chatter rising from the streets, but for 3 souls, the season felt heavier than ever. Emily Carter walked slowly through the park one late evening, her coat pulled tight around her. She needed air, space, anything to quiet the storm inside her chest. The world around her was beautiful, but beauty felt cruel when one's heart ached so deeply. She had spent years by Alexander Steele's side, waiting silently, loving faithfully. But Sophia's confession to her, about Alexander's feelings, had crushed what little hope she'd clung to. Alexander had chosen Sophia. Even if Sophia had said no, the truth remained, Emily had never been his first thought. The meeting in the park. Footsteps echoed behind her. Emily turned and froze. Alexander. He stood a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets, his tall frame outlined by the golden glow of the street lamps. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, seemed softer tonight. "Mr. Steele," Emily said quietly, her professional mask rising instinctively. "Alexander," he corrected, stepping closer. "Out here, it's just Alexander." She blinked, caught off guard. He had never insisted on that before. They fell into step together, walking slowly along the winding path. The silence stretched, filled only by the crunch of leaves beneath their shoes. "You've been distant," Alexander finally said, his voice low. Emily glanced away. "I've been busy." "That's not it," he pressed. "You've changed, and I don't like it." Emily stopped, turning to face him. "What do you want me to say? That everything is fine? That I haven't noticed how you look at Sophia? How your walls crumble for her, but never for me?" Her voice trembled, but her eyes blazed. For the first time, years of silence erupted into words she could no longer hold back. Alexander stared at her, stunned. "Emily, I've been here," she continued, her voice breaking. "Every day. I know how you take your coffee, how you hate late meetings, how you pretend not to care but always stay late when someone on the team is struggling. I know you. And her breath hitched. I love you, Alexander. I've loved you for so long it hurts." The words hung in the air like shattered glass, dangerous and sharp. The confession. Alexander's jaw tightened. He looked at her as though seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. "Emily." His voice was rough, unsteady. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because you never looked at me the way you looked at her," Emily whispered. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Because I thought, maybe if I stayed, if I proved myself, one day you'd notice." But you didn't. Not until now. Alexander stepped closer, his hand lifting slightly as though to touch her cheek, but he stopped short, letting it fall back to his side. You've been the one constant in my life, he admitted. The one person I can rely on without question. When Sophia turned me down, he paused, swallowing hard. I realized I might have been blind. Blind to what's always been right in front of me. Hope flickered in Emily's chest, but it was fragile, trembling. Might have been, she echoed. His eyes closed briefly. When they opened again, they were filled with turmoil. I can't give you what you deserve. Not now. Not when I don't even know what my heart is trying to tell me. I don't want to lie to you, Emily. You mean too much for that. The hope in her chest shattered. The choice. Emily turned away, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. So that's it. I bare my heart, and you can't even decide if I matter to you. Alexander's face twisted with guilt. It's not that simple. It is, she said firmly, though her voice trembled. Love is simple, Alexander. You either feel it, or you don't. Everything else is excuses. Her words cut him deeply because he knew she was right. But the truth was cruel. He didn't know. He was a man who had built an empire on clarity and control, yet when it came to matters of the heart, he was utterly lost. Emily took a shaky breath. I can't keep living like this. Loving you in silence. Waiting for a day that may never come. I deserve more than your uncertainty. Alexander reached for her then, his hand gripping her arm gently, desperately. Don't walk away, Emily. Please. She looked at him, her eyes full of love and pain. If you can't choose me now, you never will. She pulled free, her footsteps echoing against the path as she walked away. Alexander stood frozen under the golden leaves, watching the only woman who had ever truly loved him disappear into the night. Unrequited and unspoken. Days turned into weeks. Emily submitted her resignation quietly, her letter sitting on Alexander's desk one morning like a dagger in his chest. He read it 3 times, his hand tightening with each line. She hadn't left out of anger or spite. Her words were graceful, professional, but final. She needed to move on. She needed a life that wasn't built around a man who couldn't give her his heart. For the first time in years, Alexander Steele felt powerless. He had lost Sophia. He was losing Emily. And the cruelest part was, he had only himself to blame. He tried to call her, but she didn't answer. He tried to see her, but she was gone before he arrived. Her absence left the office hollow, cold in a way no amount of steel or glass could mask. The final scene. It was weeks later when fate brought them together again, by chance, in Central Park once more. Emily was sitting on a bench, a book in her lap, her hair catching the soft autumn sunlight. Alexander approached slowly, uncertain. Emily. She looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with everything left unsaid. Why are you here? She asked softly. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe because I miss you. Her chest tightened, but she shook her head gently. Missing me isn't the same as loving me, Alexander. He lowered his gaze, the weight of his own failures pressing on him. I know. They sat there for a while, side by side yet miles apart. When Emily finally stood to leave, she offered him a small, bittersweet smile. Sometimes love isn't loud, she said quietly. Sometimes it waits. Patiently. But not forever. And with that, she walked away, her figure fading into the golden light. Alexander remained on the bench, his heart heavy with the knowledge that for once, power and wealth meant nothing. Because the one woman who had given him her whole heart had slipped through his fingers. And though the future remained uncertain, one truth was undeniable. Some love stories remain unrequited. Some remain unspoken. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Until we meet again in the next story, take care and keep the magic of imagination alive.